So what we thought we'd do is I'm just going to talk for like 2 or 3 minutes about Solanas, and Olivia, you're going to talk for 2 or 3 minutes about the play, and then super interested to hear what you think of it. Linda texted me and she said that was a trick.
Especially the ending, oh my god.
So I wrote down some notes. So let me just say this. So let me show you the video first. Right? So you've got a video to look at. There's very, very little information out there about her, or very little images and footage of her. So this is the original cover page. That's her drawing of play. And this is an ad from the Village Voice, which you probably don't know. It was a newspaper, a very important counterculture newspaper in New York for many, many years. So she did actually advertise for people to turn up and do it, in this case, a pre-production reading of what she's calling here Up From the Slime. So what she's most well known for is there were 2 things: the writing of the SCUM Manifesto, which comes after this play. This play was 1965. And then on June 3, 1968, she shot and almost killed Andy Warhol and one other person, art dealer, who almost no one talks about, and whose name I always forget. So this is just 1 minute of media footage, so you'll hear her talk, and what you're seeing is the perp walk, like it's a real thing, like she's been walked into the police station to speak to the media and then out again and put in a car. Oh, now how do I turn the volume on this thing? Should it just be on? Let's just try and see.
Warhol is shot and critically wounded by a disgruntled would-be actress named Valerie Solanas, who tells Jim Gash in this necessarily censored tape.
Valerie, why did this happen?
Because he's a
Let's clean it up a little. Why did this happen?
because he's a piece of garbage.
What did he do to you?
Well, let's say, our organization SCUM, he wanted anything to control SCUM. Yeah, we wanted SCUM and we got it.
He may die.
Good.
You mean that?
Yeah, I do.
Why do you hate him so much?
Because he's him.
He gave you a part in one of his movies.
Big deal. I didn't ask for it, he asked me to do it.
What do you think's going to happen to you now?
I have no idea, I don't care. I'm looking forward to going to jail because there's nothing out here but garbage.
Miss Solanas is put in a mental hospital. Mr. Warhol recovers.
So this Warhol didn't do recover and died a decade or so
He was
later.
never the same.
He was never the same. He was, and there are very moving photographs on the internet of these very famous photographs taken by Richard Avedon of his torso, like just kind of ripped to shreds by the bullets. So he was very lucky to survive. So she goes to prison for a period of time, is diagnosed with a paranoid schizophrenia, and then I wrote obscurity, sex, work, madness. So that's kind of what happens, and she dies in 1988 around the age of 52. She outlived Warhol. I think he died in the mid-80s. She outlived him by a year or 2. So that's her. So we might get to her infamy and her madness. So do you want to say something about the play and what you've been thinking of your
like our project?
yeah?
So we are currently in the casting phase of the staging of the play. We have a tech team, Elizabeth's tech team, if anyone is interested in helping out. But we really need actors and actresses, so if you're at all interested. But that's the phase we're at right now. About to start working on set design. We're going to Goodwill this weekend to get costumes. And it will be staged on November 3rd, 4th, and 5th in Harlan Cinema. So come out and see it. This is the second time it's been performed. It was performed once a year after it was discovered in 2000 in San Francisco. They turned it into a musical. We're not doing any of that. So yeah, it's exciting. It doesn't happen often, and we're gonna record it, put bits of it in the documentary so that people can see it rather than just read it. And do you want me to go over the plot?
Let me just say before you do the plot, she wrote the play in 1965. She was quite friendly with Warhol. And she gave him a copy of the play saying, do you want to produce this or film it? And he apparently thought it was so obscene that it was probably an FBI setup. because he was being harassed, because his films and his work was quite confrontational. And so there was quite a lot of shutting down of Warhol films by police and by the FBI. So he refused to produce it. And the copy that you've got is a copy from the Warhol archives, and he lost it. He just threw it out. And back in the day, of course, you typed up a copy and it was in a copy you had. So the play went missing for many, many years. But Warhol had this compulsive habit of throwing everything into boxes. So the Warhol Museum in Pittsburgh has got all the boxes. He would throw literally everything. This plate would go in, everything. And they found the play at some point. And you'll see it's got stamped on it, Warhol Archives. So yeah, it was missing for a long time, and then someone found it.
In a trunk.
In a trunk, yeah, in a box somewhere with Warhol. And then this has just come out last year, I think. This is Sternberg Press, 2022. This is Sternberg Press, which is a subsidiary of MIT Press. So it's like an art book press. So it's now in circulation. Maybe I'll pass it around. You can see it's sort of pretty fonts. So yeah, that's kind of what happened to the play. So the play was infamous as well, partly in that way, it disappeared.
Okay, so when was it discovered?
In 1999.
Okay.
Yeah, and some group of people put it on
Yeah.
as a musical. Which is not a bad choice.
It didn't get great reviews.
So the plot, we're going to run through the plot and then we'll have a chat.
So there's no, she doesn't split it up into scenes, but there are kind of 7 distinct parts of the play. The first one, we meet Bongi, is that how we pronounce it? I've been pronouncing it Bonji, but she says
I have a friend with the last name pronounced Bongi.
Bongi, so we're gonna go
With a hard G.
Yeah.
Yeah. I looked it up today. It is a South African first name.
Okay.
But it's also vernacular for buttocks.
Oh.
There you go, marijuana.
Oh. And how is it pronounced?
Doesn't say. But a hard G, you'd think, right, Bongi?
Bongi.
And I think probably in African
I mean, in French it would be a soft G, but like followed by an I, it would be je, like bon G, but
Yeah.
that doesn't mean it would be that in South Africa.
Well, we meet her on the streets of an unnamed city as a lesbian prostitute is how she's described online. I don't know if, as a reader, if you would, how you would classify her, but she's catcalling on the streets. And then White Cat and Spade Cat join her. They are both also catcallers. The Spade Cat successfully attracts a broad or a chick, and White Cat doesn't and is angry, and they both leave. And then Alvin walks across the street. Bonji catcalls him, gives his attention. He eventually pays her to have sex with him in an alley after a long comedic back and forth, and then he goes away. And then we have 2 drag queens, Miss Collins, and we just looked up how to pronounce this, but it's Scheherazade. Scheherazade. Never mind.
I think that's what it was when we Googled.
Okay. See, I don't remember.
Do you know who Scheherazade is?
I don't.
So she's somebody in 1001 Nights, and she is, can't remember the whole story, but she basically has to keep retelling these stories in order to stay alive.
Yeah, she's a main narrator.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a famous name.
I just read a beautiful poem about Scheherazade, actually.
Yeah.
I'll send it to you guys. It's wonderful.
So these 2 drag queens, Miss Collins wants to be a lesbian, and Scheherazade.
What do you think's going to happen to you now?
I have no idea, I don't care. Huh?
Insist, and the play uses he, him pronouns, but insists that he is a female. And then they leave, and then we meet Ginger, who's like a young woman. She's lost. She's looking for a turd in a bag so that she can go to dinner with these men who know how to eat shit. And she invites Bongi to dinner. Bongi says yes. They meet with a dinner guest, Russell. And Ginger's character, she looks up to men. She wants to be desired by men. She's like a daddy's girl. And Bongi and Ginger have a back and forth about why you have sex, and to prove a point, Bongi has sex with Russell in a bush. Then, oddly, we leave the street setting, and it's a teacher who delivers a monologue about basic fucking. That's the quote from the monologue. And then teacher never returns. We go back to the street setting, and we meet Arthur, who goes by Arthur because that is her husband's name. They have, her and Bongi have kind of similar views. They kind of like each other. And then Arthur's son comes from the playground, and he's in trouble because he's exposed his penis and he won't put it away. And so Arthur murders her son and digs a grave for him. And that is the end of the play.
It's a really nice copy.
Sorry?
It's a really nice copy. I found this in the library from Greg Press.
Oh, that's
I
interesting.
think it's a Swedish press. And it's like, it's
What
pure
date is
art.
it?
Huh?
What date is it?
I think recent. But it's not nearly as nice as that. 2021. Greg Press, Sweden.
It might be an offshoot. MIT might have. This is based in London. So, yeah. Yeah, we can certainly sit here for half an hour and talk about copyright issues. There are significant copyright issues because one of the things about dying destitute is you don't live in a state, so it's unclear who owns, who you write to ask for permission to perform your play. Okay, so shall we go around? Let's just go around. Let's just, I don't know, say a word or a phrase or a sentence, or you might want to repeat it as a trick. Let's look around and just pick up just a general sense of tone about it.
Let's start with me.
Yeah, why not?
I thought it was incredible. Like, it was a trip, but I also I liked the brashness of it. And I liked it that it dared to end with a scene of a mother murdering her child. Like, you're just not supposed to do that.
What did you say, brash? Oh my God, Blackboard, it's like...
I know, it's so weird, I know.
There we go.
It was, I guess, witty is maybe a word.
Yeah.
Like every other line made me laugh or react, like just back to back, constantly.
But you're saying it's witty rather than funny or rather than
Well, I mean, it's
comedy?
funny as well. I
Uh-huh.
just think there's like a certain angle to the humor where like you're not expecting what's coming next, and then it happens, you're like, oh.
Yes, yeah. There's a lot of banter. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I think it's probably the most intelligent and absolutely ludicrous play I've ever read. Those are the words that come up most. Like, at one point I just wrote "what" on the page, because like, what? When the turd was first mentioned, and then it explains, and I go, oh my God, that's brilliant. Okay, it's perfect. It's perfect.
What was the turd?
Well, it's because she's looking for the turd, and I'm thinking, what? And then she says that because men like a woman who will eat shit. I'm like, oh, that's such a brilliant extended metaphor that just makes no sense, and then it does.
Yeah, I think what comes to mind besides what's already been said is it feels like concentrated, like there's so much packed in, like really not that many pages. And then like whatever the opposite of like self-important is, like it feels like it doesn't take itself seriously in a way that makes it fun to read. Like it's about serious topics, but the writing doesn't make you feel like it's about serious topics, at least for me.
What's a word for that? What's a word for not taking yourself too seriously?
Self-effacing.
Is it self-effacing?
I don't know. Maybe that's not the word.
She's a little self-aggrandizing, isn't she?
That's more like making fun of yourself than self-effacing.
Flippant.
Tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
Maybe this is just like a synonym for scummy, but I like grubby and grimy.
But what made you think Robbie and Rhyme?
Just the way that all of it kind of happens, like in the street, and it's like, well, let's go have sex in the alley. Let's go have sex in a bush. Like, I'm not going to a hotel. I'm not going to your place. You're not coming to my place. We're doing this in the alley.
Yeah.
Turd for dinner.
Yeah, good.
Oh, it was silly.
Silly.
In a good way.
That's good.
Vulgar. Similar to concentrated, just quick pace, like a stream of consciousness. It's just like no breaks. I thought that was awesome. One of my favorite lines, the two-sex system must be right. It's survived hundreds of thousands of years, so is disease.
Mm-hmm.
So many. That was another thing. Just an incredible collection of one-liners.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
A lot of that I feel like I've actually heard elsewhere and didn't realize they came from this play.
They end up in the SCUM Manifesto, which might be one of them. The disease one, because in the SCUM. So you might have read it there. That could be, yeah.
I really liked when the man said, I have an eye for the ladies, and then Bonnie says, what's the other eye for men? That was funny.
And then the eye for ladies reading again. The women's side is the other thing. But it might be one of the last lines in the poem, right? Yeah, there's, what's the other eye for? Horse. I don't know, Olivia, you're neck deep in it. What do you think? Nasty in the sense of mean, or nasty in the sense of sexual roles?
My word is brazen.
Brazen. Brazen goes with brash, doesn't it? Do you want to say more about that?
Well, the definition of brazen, which I just looked up on my computer, is bold and without shame, which is what I was trying to kind of say. Like, it said the things, it didn't care, it like purposeful, it like actively didn't care that they were things that other people would be shameful of or would say.
So that seems like a really great place to try and then connect it to questions of queerness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody have any thoughts about that, about the bravenness of it, the shamelessness of it in relation to sex?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's inflammatory, and it's not trying to sanitize anything for the benefit of the viewer. It feels like, if anything, she's subjecting the viewer to this experience, including the really long, uncomfortable monologue by the teacher that like includes the description of sex training. Essentially, I don't even know exactly what was going to be staged with that, or if I think it's probably not being staged. But I think it's, at least to me, like designed to elicit a reaction within the viewer in a way that doesn't create a palatable version of sex or sexuality. I mean, even the fact, I was thinking about how in the beginning, Bongi, who decided? Bongi? Okay, I also was going back to it, is like catcalling these people. And I feel like a lot of times representations of queer people are sympathetic or are designed to position queerness as a positive, especially if it's created by a queer person, like the good representation idea. But she's out here with these two cats catcalling people also. Like there's a lot of parallels with that.
The other thing, it says when brazen is used as a verb, it means to endure an embarrassing or difficult situation by behaving with apparent confidence and lack of shame. And I think it's an aspect of this book where it's like, it's about kind of, like the situation of like gender and sex as it is what she's enduring through kind of the brazen language and actions of the characters. Like this is, she didn't create the situation, but she's dealing with it with confidence.
And yeah, and am I right that she's dealing with it, or the play is dealing with it, kind of to no good end? I mean, literally, no good end for the poor little, what's his name?
I think it's Little Boy.
Yeah, Little Boy. It's not a good ending for him. But it seems like the play is just talking about the ongoingness of of this brazenness. Like there's no scenes and there's no narrative structure in any regular sense. It's a very strange structure, isn't it, to have the spotlight of the teacher and then to return. To return and repeat, there's a lot of repeating in that last little segment. So yeah, so there's something about sex and gender that's just to be, what did you say? Was it brazen? Endured. Brazenly managed.
But I feel like it's more than just managed. I mean, she's ending something. I mean, you could say she's ending reproductive futurism. You know, this is very strongly anti-reproductive.
Is it also anti-sex?
Totally.
I got a strong
totally.
vibe of like the best thing we should all be doing is not having sex.
It reminds me of Bersani, you know, saying that everybody actually hates sex. We dress it up, right?
Yeah. Did it feel anti-sex to you guys?
Yeah. That's kind of why she has sex with Russell. It's to prove that sex doesn't mean anything.
Yeah,
There's no pleasure.
Yeah, it feels like sex and sexuality is just turned into just yet another thing you have to deal with, kind of like any other passerby or like a turd or something. It's just something that's there that you have to.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I don't actually know the page, but I remember there being a scene where she says that her career, like as a sex worker, is more honest. Like, because they're all discussing sex and gender relations and I think equality. I now need to go find it and make sure I'm not completely paraphrasing. But she says that her view is more honest. So I do agree that it has that anti-sex bent to it.
What's the relation between honesty and anti-sex?
Well, I think that she's saying that sex is transactional, and that there's actually not revolutionary power and desire in it, but that it's transactional, it's interrelational and power oriented, and that at least she's claiming that. Like at least she's getting paid, she's getting something out of it. Other people might not be, but like she's getting money. So.
For my feminist medias, well, okay, we just watched Pretty Woman in our class and thinking about like Julia Roberts as a sex worker in that movie versus like what's happening in this play. I mean, 90s rom-coms are like, my movies are rated, which I think is really funny, and like the way that they portray sex is just so different from how sex is portrayed in like modern day rom-coms, and the character of Edward and like what kind of man he is what we were talking about today. Like, he's not like this macho, desirable, super muscular man. He's like very subdued, and she's the one who knows how to drive a stick car, but like he doesn't. Versus like the sex work that happens in this play that is so much more like, there's like not romance coming out of it. It's like, if anything, the opposite, where like she, in Pretty Woman, she's engaging in sex work with him, and then comes to me like, oh, but then I could be with this man and it could be so wonderful, and she's kind of given this like different life presented to her. But I feel like that's the opposite of what's going on here, of like sex almost seems like it brings about like endings and like a shattering almost.
But isn't this, Pretty Woman's one of my favourite films, isn't the sex in Pretty Woman also transactional? Because he says, there's a whole conversation, isn't there, somewhere in the middle of the movie where he's going to give her an apartment and she refuses. So there is a whole discussion over the question of money.
Yeah, but then she kisses on the mouth, which you're never supposed to do, and then it becomes something different, and that's when I feel like she has this moment that's like, oh.
Yes, I don't think you can make a nihilism argument in relation to but it was kind of, it was controversial at the time, right? Do you remember? People were very angry.
I do. I don't remember the movie very well because I just saw it when it first came out and I haven't seen it since. But
yeah, they were angry about the glamorization of sex work. What class were you?
It's with Dr. Risley, actually.
Oh, feminist media studies.
Yeah,
right. Okay.
yeah.
email, so it's just going to ding every time I get an email.
This copy's not the same.
Really?
It looks like the publisher took some creative liberties.
Interesting.
They,
With this, can I go
they
with it?
changed spade cut to black cut.
Yes. So I was going to ask you that. Is any of it offensive? Did any of you find it offensive, or any of you like it?
Has anyone seen Fritz the cat? It reminds me a little bit of like the crows in Fritz the cat, where it's like, on a technical level, like this probably is offensive, but like just the way that it's presented in the context of the play, like it feels like it belongs there.
Mm-hmm. Well, also, I mean, some of it's just very racist.
Mm-hmm.
Like spade is a very racist word.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as one example, it's just like right in your face, right, right from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
There are other scenes.
It's very misogynistic.
Yeah.
Very racist, misogynistic.
But I think going back to that like flippant idea, like it crosses that line and then lets you know that it knows it's doing that in a way that like a lot of other media doesn't. So I mean, it's hard to say like, oh, is this racist or like, you know, is it, I don't know if that's like a thing you can really assign to it. But it's like using these terms and ideas and then just like recognizing it, turning it into part of the play as well.
So it feels like as a text, it's working with something in relation to race and class, I guess, and gender.
That's what I kind of felt when I was reading
Do you have something more specific to say about it? Can you find a place for us to look at that?
Can I just say one thing while you're looking? Like, to me, it's interesting that even the stage directions are in that language. Like, you know, the broad ignores her in parentheses, or white cat to chick. Like, usually the stage directions are more neutral, more neutral language. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know what to make of that. I've never seen that before, ever.
Yeah, yeah. And on page 5, page 5? Yeah, page 5. There's a reference to Never on Sunday, which actually I looked up today. It's the first time I bothered to look it up. It's a 1960s Greek rom-com in which a prostitute meets an American classics scholar. And he tries to pull her onto the road of moral behaviour, and she tries to get him to loosen up, which is the algorithm of all rom-coms, isn't it? Someone's a little uptight and someone's too loose and ... It's an obstacle. So I would have to watch the film to know a little bit more about why she calls him John.
Oh my god, I've seen this movie. I just looked up the cover of it.
Yeah? Never on Sunday?
Yeah. It sounded really familiar, and I recognized that. I saw...
Do you remember much about it?
Not that much. It was a while ago, and I didn't watch it with a critical lens, but I remember it being shockingly aestheticized and also kind of offensive in a way I couldn't tell if it was on purpose or not. Like, everything was very flattened and also caricature-like. It's sort of like they took an AI generator and was like prostitute rom-com and then made it. But I kind of want to go back and watch it now, like with the actual critical.
I might see I'm trying to stream. So what's the difference between something being offensive on accident and something being deliberately offensive and something being offensive to, is that too many options? Deliberately offensive, offensive in knowing what it's doing. How can we tell?
used to be deliberate, or I read it as deliberately being offensive, then I assume that she's making a point through about how offensive it is. Though I wouldn't be able
Yeah, we might have
to
to
articulate that.
So what's the difference between us just reading a homophobic play that uses the word faggot all the time? Like how do we you know?
I mean, I feel like it like kind of goes both ways, and like I don't know, like I could have been offended, but nothing in this play kind of really makes sense. So I was about to take the offensive part seriously, and the rest of it not seriously. So I feel like I swayed it toward not taking the offensive.
I feel like I knew what I was getting into. Like, it's written by Valerie Solanas and it's called Up Your Ass. Like, I don't know. And especially after, I mean, you never really know people's intent, but like watching the video where she's like, you know what, I hope he does die. I'm kind of like, okay, like, she just is inflammatory. And I think part of that is like what makes her, like, just so interesting.
So maybe there's something about hyperbole that keeps offence. Do you have anything horrible in technical to say about hyperbole?
I do think though, like this line, I don't know if this is helpful or not, but this is the white cat, so this dude, while walking off, says, I may as well turn in my yo-yo. All the swinging chicks are either queer or they go with spades. A white man doesn't stand a chance nowadays. We're stuck, what are we stuck with? All the fish. So all of those words are in the mouth of this white man.
Yeah.
And so to me that's...
What page are you on?
Well, in mine it's page 7.
It's marked 3 in this version, if people have the Warhol Museum version.
Page 3.
I
see, yes.
Do you see?
Sorry, yes.
White cat while walking off. I may as well turn in my yo-yo. All the swinging chicks are either queer or they go with spades. The white man doesn't stand a chance nowadays. What are we stuck with? All the fish. So that's like the position of the, like that's the stereotypical thing that the stereotypical white man would say. And he's using that same language that's being used throughout the play, you know?
Who are the fish? Is it a derogatory term about women?
Probably because
A lot of, oh, sorry.
no, I was just gonna say, I know in RuPaul's Drag Race, like if you like look really feminine, they'll say like, oh, you're serving fish, you're giving fish. But that was like in the early, like the late 2000s and early 2010s, and like it's completely like fallen out of favor and is considered very derogatory. But before then, it was like in
Well, it also is just like you're serving like a real woman, like you're a real woman. So then
I was
Because
gonna say,
you have a vagina. You're so good at it. It's as if.
it's all. I mean, that's kind of where I think it.
yeah.
So then
I
it's
think
like
it's
the
fallen
real-
out of favor, but some trans women used to use it or still use it.
Would you use it in this vernacular way?
Yeah, like you can, like,
Yeah.
as far as I know, like, not much of that one.
But it's interesting because it's contrasted with the swinging chicks.
Yeah. Yeah. So
It's not clear what that means to me.
Well, and I think a lot of the time in Solanas, she differentiates a lot amongst women. Like, so there are fish women, there are swinging chick women, there are, as you said before, daddy's girls women, there are the turd eating women.
Typology.
Yeah, there is. There's a whole typology of women, which is kind of interesting.
It is. It is interesting. There's something very queer about that.
Yeah, there are broads, there are chicks. Alma turns out to be, I don't know, queer curious or something towards the end. A murderess. And
she's a child killer.
So there's something about this little passage, Lynn, that you're thinking.
I just think that's one of the places that demonstrates the knowingness that Kalan was talking about.
Yeah.
If we want to read it through that lens.
Because because it's put in the mouth of the white cat.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's complaining, you know, about how hard it is to be a white man.
Yeah, I feel like every character is set up to be a caricature, and Bongi is there to point out like every single irony or like flaw, and so that's what gives it that sense. I also don't know if it's necessarily like a thing you can textually find as much as it is just like a feeling when you're reading it of like, oh, this knows, versus like when you're reading something that's actively racist and homophobic, you're like, you get a different like affect.
Different vibe. Because you know, racism is often quite, and homophobia, it's often quite flat, right? I listened to some lecture recently about fascism, and I think this is George Orwell. I don't know if this is going to meander a little bit, but I'm going to get back to this. So this person was making the argument that George Orwell apparently wrote an essay about why did fascism not take in Britain during the early part of the 20th century in a way that it totally took in like Italy and Germany and to a certain extent in France, right? So what is it about British character that saved Britain from this particular viral infection of fascism? And Orwell's argument is that the Brits are hypocrites. They mean one thing and they say another. So there's something about, if you're going to trade in national character, there's something about British character that's very hypocritical, and everybody knows the Brits to be hypocritical in this way. That they feel a thing, but they do the opposite, or they say they care, but they really don't. And this behaviour was the inoculation against fascism, because fascism itself is so direct. It just hates. It doesn't dress it up as anything, it just hates. So I thought this was kind of, I've been thinking about this quite a lot, like it's quite an interesting argument about where fascism can and cannot land, like on what inadvertently might protect a place or a person or a politics against the flattening effects of racism. And it's not necessarily a good thing. Like, hypocrisy is not kind of great. Like, it's not a thing about, oh my God, the Brits amazing. It's like this is the kind of weird people that they are, and so they didn't fall flat to this. They didn't fall to this flatness of fascism. So maybe there's something about this that has something too much going on in it for it to be flat enough to be hateful or offensive. I mean, hate can also be very complicated, but there's a kind of hate that just says, when it says fish, it means fish. It means disgusting.
Is she a turf?
Is she what?
Is she a turf?
I think she might be if she's here right now, but is she a turf in this? Is the play turfy?
Is the play turfy? Is she a turf?
I don't think so. I mean, I feel like nobody escapes her derision. So not just drag queens, but women. I mean, a turf would be all on board with all the women, right? Don't you think?
Yeah. So she's not a turf because she's not a feminist?
Yeah, I mean, what kind of, I mean, she's not in solidarity with other women, for sure.
Well, did you all read the dedication? So we know who she's in solidarity with.
Indeed.
So what would the play have to be turfy?
I don't know.
Like, do you suspect it's a little turfy in places?
No. No. People call her a turf, that's all.
Oh, do they?
Oh, do they?
You said we were talking about like when you first looked her up, that you got results of like Valerie Solanas.
Where was that? Just like, was that on like
just
what used to be
Google,
Twitter?
And so people were kind of against her because
It's
she's
so
just
interesting.
critiqued by feminists because people think she's transphobic. But, and she probably was. I mean,
I don't know. I mean, you know, she hung. I mean, just biographically, she hung around with a lot of what most people would have been called
Yeah.
trannies.
Totally.
Like, I think she was just living on the street with,
Yeah.
with crowds of people who threw bricks at Stonewall, whatever that cliche is.
I mean, everybody gets her hatefulness. I mean, the woman who takes her husband's name, a gay man, you know, a drag queen, other women.
Yeah.
So it's not just directed at trans people.
In her manifesto, she suggests that men transition
Right.
to prevent them from at least immediately getting killed. Buy them some time by transitioning.
Yeah, so the trans woman has figured out, the trans woman is kind of exemplary of the scum, is let's get rid of as many men as possible, which is Andrea Longchu's argument about the SCUM Manifesto, that it's, that transness is a scum gesture, or trans femaleness is a scum, not trans manness. That would be a
Anti-scum. Would that be anti-scum?
I think it would be. I think she'd be a little irritated. and it's interesting in the typology here, there isn't that woman, is there?
No.
There's women, there's typical kind of heterosexual feminine women who need the approval of men, but there aren't really women who want to be men. I mean, maybe Arthur at the end. Actually, when you were saying this, Cohen, I was actually thinking, this is too big a question, but is she kind of Gertrude Stein with her typologies? You know, with her different, here are all the different types. Do you know about Gertrude Stein's The Making of Americans? And it's an insanely long book that just lists different kinds of people. It's a little Steinian, isn't it, in that sense?
And I'm not familiar, but is Stein's listing people in order to make what?
We don't know. Do we know why she?
Yeah.
No, we don't know. Because I mean, she's a modernist,
Yeah.
and so she's very interested in what you can do with language and what like it's very technical, I think, in that sense. No, she's kind of trying to describe all the people that I have met, all the Americans that I know. I guess maybe to give us a sense of what America is. But it's so excessive. It breaches the idea of Americanness, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So, I don't know what I would be.
With regards to the turf thing, I found a petition on change.com called Stop Publishing and Promoting Racist, Transphobe, Hateful Turf Valerie Solanas with 17 signatures. In case anyone was curious.
Should we sign?
They have more reasons too, and there's a link called Why Not Scum that I haven't clicked because it looks like it's going to give me a virus. But.
And who's put the thing?
It's an anonymous account called Down with Cis.
Okay.
And there's a school bus.
CIS or SIS?
CIS.
Okay.
That's interesting because most of the academic work on Solanas has been done by people I broadly call radical feminists, who are probably pretty gender critical adjacent. They might not actually be gender critical, but that it's not. She hasn't really been taken, aside from Andrea Longchu, she hasn't really been taken up by queer feminism. Should we say that? She's been mostly a hero to radical feminists who think that perhaps we should get rid of men. Yeah, men are the problem. The radical feminists would say at the root, radicalness is the root. At the root of everything is the power of men over women. Yeah, and everything else follows from that. If I can just say something a little reductive. Yeah, would that be fair about radical feminism? Yeah, patriarchy is patriarchy comes first, world historically.
It's the foundation of all other oppressions.
Yeah. And so they tend to roll over into gender critical feminism pretty fast. And those have been the women who've been most interested in writing academically about her. So that's why I'm kind of interested that you all, I'm going to presume are not really radical feminists in the classical sense, have found this interesting as a text. You know, and that says something really interesting to me about how texts come back around the block and have second lives and third lives and fourth lives.
To a point about trans men, I mean, I don't really have a full thought, but like the manifesto, she says that men have taken the female's qualities of assertiveness and being found and all those things, and have put their qualities of what we would typically consider passive women onto women. So I don't know if there's something there about maybe why for Valerie she doesn't write trans men.
Yeah, because it's too confusing, isn't it? So women who eat turds, who are silly and have husbands, all of the derogatory, sexist things we would say about those women, that they are stupid, silly and inconsequential and weak and emotional, actually